If you are a startup and you are wondering why you should elevate your branding a little bit through investing in a nice website, font palette, maybe even go a little past Canva for your logo, but you're not really sure if that's a good use of your resources, or maybe you're just here to understand where branding really plays a part in your business. Today's guest, Moly is here to actually go through some of the top branding tips for startups today. The first thing I want to say is Moly and I actually connected because he is one of our Product Launchpad students. And at the time he came to me, he was launching a playbook for Creative Warriors. It's a planner that now, just a few months later, I have the pleasure of holding in my hands and is now actually available. So we're going to put links below this, but you can go to CreativeWarriors.Life and grab a copy for yourself. I'm really excited for today. We have a lot to unpack, but I'm going to shut up, and I would love it, Moly, if you could, I guess, give us a little bit of backstory into who Moly is and how he got here.
Sure. Yeah. So I really kind of started, for me, it was like playing music in high school, which then led to like all these other creative pursuits in college, and then designing posters for like my friends' bands and just like events that they were holding. And the light bulb went on for me when I was like, when I started doing it for a summer job that I had, where I was designing posters for signage for events that we were holding at my college, which was Northeastern University in Boston. And so I was getting paid at that time to be an orientation leader, but I was unofficially designing the posters for all the signage, and I was just having so much fun doing that. So I decided to switch my major, ultimately transferred out of that school and studied digital media at a tech school in Florida called Full Sail, where I learned, everything. So it was video production, a little bit of audio, web design, graphic design, a little bit of 3D. And it was just like a great kind of overview of different types of digital media and creative pursuits. And so that then led to a 10 to 20 year. I graduated in 2004, so it's been since then that I have been working in branding agencies, ad agencies, marketing agencies for clients as big as American Express and Best Buy and Visa and Virgin, to now I'm just a one-man creative consultant, essentially, creative band, where I provide mostly brand strategy at the top level, and then on a tactical level, things like logo design, web design, video production, photography, to a plethora of clients.
Yeah, and I think the first question I want to ask is, what is branding? Because I am someone who, look, if you are watching me and you've been watching our YouTube videos for 5 years, you'll know that I hustle and am scrappy and have never truly understood branding until the last couple of years. And that is just, that's just my journey. But understanding branding to be able to take a business to another level. In the beginning, I thought that branding was just about a logo, about getting a website designed, about I basically didn't know that. When someone says you need to invest in a brand, I was like, okay, well, let's go to Fiverr for my logo, or do a scrappy one in Canva. I didn't understand or appreciate the value of what the pros do and really what branding is. So I really want to start there with defining, in your words, what is branding?
I always tell my clients that your brand is the essence of who you are. So if you were to sort of personify your business as a person, because a lot of, I think marketing people, I think you understand this too. It's like, people don't like to interact with corporations. People like to relate to people, right? Yes. So if your brand became a person, who would that person be? Is is that person male or female? You know, how tall would that person be? You know, what would they look like? What kind of food would they love to eat? What kind of conversations would they have? What are they passionate about? What are their pet peeves? And so it's like really fleshing that out in an imaginative way. I love to go through that exercise with my clients. And then taking that essence, if you will, that feeling, because ultimately a brand is a feeling, and translating that into not visuals, which is my specialty, but it's not just visuals. It's also like your customer service, you know, and it's also like if you were to have an app, like what kind of UI sounds would that app have? You know, if you would have a game, what would that game look and feel like? It's the copy, you know, that's super important too. You know, what is the tone of voice that you're using whenever you're speaking on not just your marketing website, but say like your support website and your emails that you're having with your clients when they run into some sort of issue with, say, shipping or a damaged product, or they want to return an item, you know what I mean? So, and there are some brands that are like humorous with that kind of stuff, and other brands that are very formal and very serious. So that's essentially what it comes down to.
And so when I look at, early me thinking branding is a logo, and the logo doesn't really matter. You just need something that's a visual. What you're talking about is this whole other level. It's like, it's a brand personality. It's how essentially people interact with you, how you want them to feel. And it's turning your brand almost into a human experience.
Yeah, totally. And I would say it's not even necessarily the personality. The personality is the expression. Oh, okay. Before that, in the deeper core, is the person, you know?
Right. So at what level then? Because there's different levels of startups, as you know. Like you take someone just launching a product or an e-commerce brand. You have someone who's hit their first 6 figures. You have multiple 7 figures. You have some businesses that are VC backed, multiple millions of dollars in annual revenue. At what point should someone, when should someone invest in a brand? Because is it something that you start with a scrappy logo and then evolve into? Is it something you should do from the beginning?
I would say, I probably, if you were to ask me this, say, 10 years ago, I probably would have said from the very, very beginning, but that's not necessarily the right answer for everybody. It might be, I do have some clients who, didn't start working with, I had one specific client actually who didn't start working with me until after they got VC. Yeah. And, in the case of my product, obviously because this is what I do, I started it from the very, very, very beginning. But I would say once you have a clear notion of 2 things, who your customer is, who your person is, and also who you are, meaning specifically how you want to present to your customer, what you want your customer's experience of you to be. Because if you don't have at least a clear feeling for what you want that to be, a person like me is not really gonna help you a whole lot, because I have worked with some startups and entrepreneurs where it's, I'm taking them through the exercises that I typically take them through, and they're just giving me scraps, or they're giving me kind of superficial answers, and that, to be completely honest, is not really going to make for a great brand at the end of the day. You have to have a very clear idea of who you are, and a brand consultant can come in and help you clarify that further, but they cannot make those decisions for you. Does that make sense?
It does, because what's interesting is, and we see this online all the time with design versus conversions, and I'm someone who has learned online marketing through data and having the data to respond to make changes. So one example would be, in the very beginning, you have a theory of who you think your ideal customer is, but then you go out and do paid ads and survey your customers and talk to them and actually validate who that person is and why they resonate with your brand. And there's this war that I think goes on between designers and online marketers, because you have one side that's you have to define your customer persona, you have to understand the overarching message, but then you have online marketers that are like, we're not committing because the data isn't telling us what we want to see yet. So I'm curious what your opinion is on that. And I think that goes really well to you knowing that you don't want brands necessarily to invest too early on because they have to really know who that person is. But that's one reason, I guess, me as a business owner did not invest in branding early on, because I spent the first 2 years really figuring out who our customer is. And that changed so many times. And even when we work with startups and get them to really go deep to validate who their customer is, if they had invested in branding early on, everything would have been out the window and they'd have to start from zero. So I'm curious what your opinion is on that for branding to elevate the data, or do you see what I'm trying to say? Yeah,
totally. I think you're talking about the relationship between left brain and right brain, intuition and data. I think both are equally important, and there is, in my opinion, there has to be a back and forth. It's not one or the other. It's chicken and egg, if you will.
Yeah, I get that.
The chicken gives birth to an egg, and then the egg becomes a chicken, which gives birth to another egg, and then the process repeats itself. So I think you have to start with something, and for me, that does come from it has to come from within. The strongest brands that I have worked with personally are entrepreneurs who just they have this vision, and they're like, this is what it is, and they're open to evolving that over time when the data does come in. But the data never really dramatically changes it. It really is just about tweaking. Those are the strongest case studies that I've come across myself. And I would say that if you're unsure, then going into the data can definitely help to inform you. But ultimately, branding is such an emotional thing, and we've seen, and this goes back to, interestingly, back to science and data that have shown how emotional we are as creatures. Human beings, we're such emotional, social animals, and we just can't escape that. And so I am always pushing my clients to go deeper into the emotional aspect of branding. And, take more of a heartful and a soulful approach towards it, rather than the data says that, this particular search term is trending on Amazon or on YouTube, so therefore that's where we need to go. Okay, sure. That's sort of I would say the Microsoftian way of branding. I don't know if you know how they approach product development, but that is how they do it. They'll look at, reams and reams and reams of data and then say, okay, spreadsheets, that's the way to go. So let's create Microsoft Excel, because that's what's trending. Whereas the Apple way of branding is, so many incredible stories, from not just Steve Jobs, but I love the story of the way that Final Cut Pro was given, actually not even Final Cut Pro, but before that iMovie was given birth to. Okay. But it was the primary engineer, his name Randy Ubiyos. I don't know how to say his last name, but he was on a family vacation with his kids, was capturing video, and they went swimming in Mexico, I believe, and came across these incredible sea creatures, and he wanted a way to edit that video easily and didn't have a way to do it. So he was like, man, if there was something that was easy and fun that made the video making process relatable for the everyday person, a dad like me, then that would be amazing. And so that gave birth to iMovie, which then became Final Cut Pro, which now a lot of, let's say 50% of YouTubers use, right? I don't know the exact point, but a lot of YouTubers use it, myself included. And so that is more of an intuitive way of approaching, not just branding, but product development. And so I think it comes down to your personality too. There are people who are just more analytical and logic and rationale driven. So it's hard to get someone like that to tap into themselves emotionally. And you might have a product that is more appealing to a logical person. You might have, say, a healthcare product that deals with a population where that is high risk for a certain type of cancer. And so in that sense, you might be having to appeal to hospitals and healthcare providers, so where there's like a lot of regulation and whatnot. But I always say, even in a situation like that, you can tap into the emotionality of like family, where there's so much emotion, right? Like the importance of saving lives of, your grandmother, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your niece, your nephew. And there's an opportunity there to take an emotional approach and make it about family versus the specific technical feature of your, healthcare device, for example.
Elevating it.
Yeah, totally.
Versus the emotional connection. Right,
totally. And I mean, you speak about that in the course as well. And I think that's super important, but there's an element that ties into it from a branding perspective.
I'd love to bring it back because I think, someone watching this that wanted maybe some tips on whether their logo should be square or round got a whole other level of answers. So some of the most frequently asked questions I'd love to, dig into a bit is, number one, where should someone start creating a logo?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, you can go to places like Fiverr and Upwork and find great logo designers and brand designers. But again, it's like, no matter who you work with, if you have that clear notion and idea of like what your brand values are, it's just going to be so much easier for that person that you're going to hire to do the work for you. So I would say, go back to your brand values and then really think about like, okay, well, how would this translate into visuals, specifically for not just logo, but your visual brand identity. To me, it boils down to like texture, colors, and typography.
Okay. Visually speaking,
right? So if we're looking at like texture and shape, colors, going back to like, say, I'll bring up, my brand again, right? So the Playbook for Creative Warriors, self-discipline, persistence, follow through. Those were the top three values for me. So when it came to not just logo, but like product design, when I was working with printers, they were like, oh, do you want a round edge or do you want a square edge? And it was very important for me to have like square edges, because a lot of planners that are out there have rounded edges. And I was like, no. It needs to be square because yeah. Right. And so because it's like, if you're thinking about these values of like discipline, focus, persistence, it's like, it's very like this kind of energy. Like I'm going to move forward and I'm going to like get shit done, And so I wanted something that was kind of like militaristic in a way, in a positive way. So, and then bringing it back to you, brand personality. Are you familiar with Jocko Willink?
Oh yeah, I have one. Yeah. Extreme ownership.
Yeah. So I love Jocko. I'm just gonna put it out there. But I was just like, that's my guy. Like he's my brand, basically.
I can see that.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that I want to connect the dots because I'm someone who started my brand with, say, a Canva logo. And so let's just say someone here is looking to just go the basic, budget, fast, scrappy route, and you end up choosing random colors for your website, paying $10 for a logo, and everything's going to feel disjointed across the board. There's no consistency. I would love to know from your perspective the difference between a brand that is inconsistent, because when we look at a logo, feelings and brand values inform the logo from the color chosen, from the font, from the size, the color palette, everything. Like there's a layer that I started to learn, and I am not a branding specialist, so but like certain colors evoke certain emotions in people. So when I started to understand the layers of branding and how people interact with certain color palettes, shapes, sizes, etc., I started to see a cheap logo as something that can either pull people in, the wrong people, or detract people. So what I'd love to, I guess, hear from you is like, what of the, because you go in from the top, you don't just make a bunch of little crappy logos, you go in from the top and it informs like the look and feel of everything. So how does the brand values and the emotions and personality and everything kind of inform the shape and the visual manifestation of a brand? And
we're trying to get it down to the nitty gritty. I totally recognize it. And this is the stuff, right? Like you can work with somebody like me for months on something like this. So it's not an easy question that I can like sort of give a stock answer to, but I would say, you know, from that budget perspective, I would say, it's how do I put this in a way that like anybody can relate to? I would honestly say, like, if you were to work with a designer on this, can we go down that road?
Let's do it. Yeah.
So then I would say give that person your set of brand values, and then creative leeway to say, I want you to essentially translate these values into visuals. And there, you know, there's like all sorts of minutia that can go into that. But that person, if they're a good designer, should be able to do that well. Yeah. The specifics, like if you're going to go down the DIY route, I would say is it ultimately comes down, like I would say the first delineation that's easy to sort of set apart is like masculine, feminine. And I know it sounds so stereotypical, and a lot of my clients are just like, oh, whatever, you know. Yeah. But it can't, like, you have to start with something, you know.
So how about this? I'm trying to ask a question. I don't think I'm getting it through the way I mean it.
Right, so and yeah.
I think I'm trying to ask is, what is the risk and what is the price that someone is going to pay? Not actually, but between a scrappy logo that has not been informed by brand values, a $10 fiber logo,
right.
one that has actually been informed. What is the difference in cost of what they're leaving on the table?
What they're leaving on the table? Ooh, that's a good question. I would say in the long term, easily thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions. You know, it just depends on how big you wanna scale. But I do think that there's a sense of trust that trust gets hyper accelerated when you get your branding right. And I think we've all seen this, right? Because when you come across something that just looks kind of scrappy and like, you know, it doesn't have that kind of
Yep.
There's no like fit and finish to it, and I think most people can actually identify that. But it's few people who can speak consciously about why they feel that way. But regardless, I think most people can recognize that. I mean, I think we've all had those experiences of like, you know, walking into a shady restaurant, for example, and just being like, I don't know if I want to eat here. And where your brand is the same, right? Like you want to create, as fast as possible, a sense of trust.
Yeah.
That, hey, you can transact with us. You can learn more about what we offer, and what we offer for you, if you're, you know, in our ideal target audience, is the perfect solution. And that, a lot of that, I'm not going to say all of it, but a lot of that comes through branding.
Because a company that is well branded means that they have put intention behind their identity, the level of company and service that they have versus something that looks scrappy,
exactly
put together, etc. So I totally, like, now that I'm thinking about it, when I look to hire out certain things, whether that is writing a book, graphic design, whatever, I will base a company based on how they present themselves to the world. If it's a scrappy, low budget website, unless if that person is like the best in the world, I'm likely to go with the other company that's well branded, has a good reputation.
Yeah. And have you ever had an experience of coming across something that you've heard great things about, then you go to their website and it's like kind of shitty looking?
Yeah.
And then what's your reaction to that?
I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Why they're so good. Why does it look like this?
Yeah.
See this like all the time with internet marketers. Like,
yes, totally.
One course we bought that I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but he has like hundreds of thousands of followers. And our designer took a look at his funnel. He's just like, what the actual F is this? This is awful. I'd never buy from this guy. But he is getting so many sales because just his reputation.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. And that's a sort of a complex thing where it's like, okay, at what point can you transcend branding, you know? And it's like, if you're, and you can, right, it's not everything, but it does, in my opinion, can account for a lot, especially if you're first starting out. Like I said, it can get you off on the right foot with somebody, with your target.
Yeah, so true. So with that being said, before we wrap up, is there anything I should have asked you today that I haven't?
Yeah, I guess we could talk about how branding applies to your website. I think that's right? That's a big thing.
Yeah, I missed that question. Let's do that. How does branding apply to your website?
Branding applies to your website, I think, first and foremost, in the messaging. I think people too often come to me with the questions of like, which template should I use? Should I use WordPress or Squarespace or Weebly or Wix? And ultimately, it doesn't really matter if your messaging isn't right. And you know this because, you know, you teach this in the course comprehensively. And that is tied part and parcel, like hand in hand with branding, you know? Yeah. And so it's about, you know, getting your positioning right and then communicating in a way that is aligned with, again, like who would your brand persona be, you know, like if it's like a courageous, like, you know, I'm thinking of like the Hunger Games and like Katniss Everdeen, that kind of like brand, or is it like a soft and like cozy, warm, inviting, nurturing kind of brand? Yeah. So then the messaging and the copy and the tone of voice should align with that. And then, it ultimately doesn't even really matter. The platform, of course, the platform matters for like logistical reasons, but, you can make any platform fit your message. So I would say focus on your message and your positioning first before you worry about whatever platform that you're on.
I love that because the platform is just the back end management.
Exactly.
What you build your site on. So it's what you convey to the world is more important than how, because you can always change from Wix to Shopify to WordPress to whatever. So yeah. Wise words there. Please listen to them. Awesome. All right. So how can people, just in case it wasn't obvious, are you taking on design clients right now? Branding.
I'm always open to having conversations, but I am pretty busy, I will say. But you can check out my portfolio and more of my work at Treasure. That's TREJURE.com.
Put all links in the description too.
And then you can check out the product that Khierstyn helped me launch, the Playbook, at CreativeWarriors.Life.
All the links are below. Not sponsored, not an affiliate, just a fan.